Join us live as we've got stuff to say about the stuff going on with Mouse. And while it's been made clear, it hasn't been fully banned. It's been removed from the curriculum. It's a curriculum that's around, like, they don't want 14-year-olds to know about this. Really?
I mean, I had a mandatory Holocaust museum field trip in middle school.
Exactly. And the problem is, when you actually hear some of the stuff from these people, it makes it very clear they just want to water things down. I mean, did you get that vibe from the articles?
I mean, that and the sort of misguided sense of being overly sensitive around media contents.
Exactly. Stuff like saying, like, oh, there's nudity. Did you see my video at all today, Ingrid? Did you see it?
Yeah, you did. See that.
And you saw the bit I was mentioning about with the nudity and how there's pretty much none of it, but they emphasize it so much. It's like, oh, look at all this gratuitous nudity. It normalizes nudity. Normalizes it when you have something like you could barely see, like right here. You have to actually really look at that. And then you have when they're actually at the camps. Hold on. Yeah, they're told go run and get in the cold and get your new outfits. Yeah, are you really gonna jerk off to that? Does that sound like that normalizes nudity?
I'd say it uses it for like an actually good shock factor. Like, this is how absolutely horrifying and dehumanizing this is.
Yeah, but it normalizes it? What?
No.
And yes, okay, there is a moment where a kid gets. Oh yeah, you have some of them get hung. That happened. And a kid got swung against a wall and stopped crying. Now, again, if this was for primary school, I wouldn't be having an issue at all. If this was a curriculum for a primary, yeah, I say no way you have little kids read this. Hell no. But middle school,
they're getting into
eighth grade. They're saying eighth graders should know this.
What?
Eighth graders.
I tell you that eighth graders, sixth graders are getting into stuff far worse than that outside of school time. They can handle it.
But eighth graders.
Now that's just getting to straight up infantilization.
Yeah, and it's like they don't want the goddamn it and all that stuff. It's like, okay, what is this? Is this a whole Christian school? It just feels like these people want to watch it down when they're saying, like, oh, I know all this stuff happened, but why are we showing all this? It's like, you're acknowledging the bad stuff happens, but then that will brainwash the kids? How does this brainwash them? What, did they say this is going to make them Nazis? The whole point of this is to show the horrors of the Holocaust, and even before they went to the camps, how hard it was for Jews to survive in Germany. So many of them many of these people were rich, and they had to give up a lot of their livelihoods, and many of them didn't know how to survive. Art Spiegelman's dad was lucky in that he was a quick learner, able to pick up on things. He might not be great, and one time, he picked up on he didn't know how to fix a boot. He knew how to fix a shoe, but he wouldn't know how to fix a leather boot for one of the Germans were going to use. So what did he do? He took it to someone who could, gave up a bit of food, so he'd have to starve that day. But he said he made sure he studied it so he knew how to do it, so he wouldn't have to give up food again in the future. That type of thinking. Not many people had that type of thinking. It's just, and again, this isn't a case where it's not fiction. No, this really happened. And it feels like there's some people who are agreeing or accepting it or being acting like, oh, they could learn it from other things. Why does it have to be comics? Because this is the medium Art Spiegelman chose to tell it in.
And what do you mean kids wouldn't understand it through comics? Kids love comics.
This was the first comic that got me to realize that you can use it beyond superheroes, that it could be able to do stuff that is basically it's that fine line that you could not do any of this stuff with even animation. You couldn't do this in a movie. You couldn't do, and doing it in text would lose a lot of its impact. But doing it through comics, it kept everything. I mean, especially if you wanted to keep the mice and cat stuff, if you did it in a text, you'd be losing everything because you'd have to describe all the details.
Indeed.
Oh, I love this. When they're acting like Polish people, which are represented as pigs, they wear masks to indicate they're in disguise. I like that, don't you?
That is pretty neat symbolism.
Yeah. Of course, you have a little joke bit where his dad's starting to tell about his mother was scared of a rat, and of course you have the joke of, but they're being portrayed as mice. The irony wasn't lost on Art. But again, just so much of this is just, you feel bad. And at the same time, though, his dad is racist. And that's an irony of it. But they make it very clear that even Art felt like, Dad, why are you acting this way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, his dad is not a good man. I want to make that clear. He's the hero of the story, but he's not a good man. And remember, we're only getting it from his dad's point of view, so that's the best way Art had to deal with. Unfortunately, his dad burned his his wife's journals, so Art never knew what his mom went through.
Huh.
So again, it's like, this is all he had to work off of, was what his dad had given him. You know what I mean? And it just, again, it's just not, it's one of those things though where this is just such an in-depth story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you just, oh yeah, you want to know who the Americans are portrayed as? Dogs!
I mean, that's fair.
It makes sense, right? If the Germans are cats, of course, the Americans are going to be dogs. And you know what the French are? Frogs! And the Romans? Gypsy moths. And the Russians? Fish! But again, you just... you get my problem, right? I mean, it's like...
Oh yeah, like, I sympathize with this all too well because I understand all too well the impulse behind wanting to censor these things for sensitivity reasons.
I'm afraid that we're going to get the religious right in it with a vengeance. This whole, moral crusading. The thing that kind of turned a lot of people against Catholics and Christians in the first place.
Oh yes, I've had my fair share of experience with that kind of thing. These are the kind of people that would end up saying that Lewis and Tolkien, who are basically some of the most famous and most accomplished Christian authors, aren't good enough.
Exactly. I mean, especially when you look at Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe. Remember that?
It's just like
it's so blatant with the Christian symbolism, but nope.
It has magic and witchcraft in it, which, if you looked at the actual context of the story, it's not witchcraft in a biblical sense, but that is a whole other can of worms.
But yeah, like I said, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that this has been because they're wanting to get rid of this. They want to get rid of V for Vendetta. Why the Last Man? It's like, good God, aren't you guys realize where we're going? We're going to start having them soon going after music and all that other stuff. But unfortunately, it's because these people seem to know, like, oh, we have people who, just because we're on the right, we're not on the left, they're going to want, they'll defend us. No, we should call out those who are, right? Those who are pulling this crap.
Yeah, it's always something in every new generation.
Exactly.
And it's just like, yeah, the sort of more fundamentalist mindset really does have kind of a stranglehold on certain parts of the conversation, where it's like, it's even something I've struggled with a fair amount, because it's like, those voices are the ones that are the loudest, and it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, but
there are plenty of other ways to do religion and to do Christianity that aren't that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, again, Christianity has, and Catholicism have such a bad rap for for so many things. That's because a bunch of overzealous, power mad in many regards. Not all of them, but some of them were power mad and wanted to use it to their advantage. And then you have just those who are just so up their butt into the Bible that they can't take it. Because I don't know if I told you this. Did I ever tell you how I view the Bible? It's
I
an
think you've
interpretation.
mentioned that before.
It's an interpretation of events, but it's not the end all be all what exactly happened. I mean, does that make sense?
It does make sense. I might disagree with it a bit, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. So now is it mostly correct, accurate with what happened in events? Oh, probably. I'm just saying there's some aspect that we will never know what's right or wrong. That's more what I'm saying. It's more of a case of where there could be a lot of stuff wrong in there we don't know because it's written from one side's interpretation of things. Part of the reason why I always like the Kevin Smith's Dogma, where it reveals that, hey, for all we know, Jesus could have been black and we didn't know it.
In fact, there are a lot of theories that say that that might have actually been closer to the truth.
Or there could have been another apostle that was never brought up because he was black. Again, for all we know, that could have happened. We'll never know. Now
Not
again,
on the side of eternity anyway.
Yep, I mean, you know that phrase, history's written by the winners. Again, that's just my viewpoint on things. I'm more of a case of I'll be honest, I am a believer still in my faith, but I'm a little bit agnostic in my views. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't really know what to call myself other than just a generic Protestant because, I've just had my issues with things.
Yeah. Completely understandable. And it just feels like, again, we're going to be falling down the same well. Eventually. Even if we're done with the left, even if we beat out the left, it looks like the hard right is coming back with a vengeance. And unfortunately, you have some people who feel like, oh, defend the right because it's the right. We don't want the left to get any power. Not realizing we're just going to be
obeying. About right and left. It's about truth and goodness. And unfortunately, people are married too much to their particular view, their particular faction's view on what that is.
I mean, heck, you were doing you've been doing D&D. Remember how much the right went after the religious right went after D&D, thinking it was the occult and Satanism?
Oh yes! Oh boy, do I remember that very handily. And the ironic fact is that Gary Gygax was a Catholic.
Yeah, it's like, not everything's a conspiracy. Not everything is done because, oh, they're worshiping the devil, because look at the pentagons and pentagrams and all that. Because, yes, there's demons involved. Doesn't mean people actually believe it. They're just having fun. But I feel like you can have fun, and you got to, because here's something else I realized. Now, I'm quite a bit older than you, so, you know, okay, let me ask you this. How would you describe history classes when you were in high school and middle school? Did you ever feel like that we were just breezing through things too fast?
My memory is blanking a bit, but I'd say that at least they were decent in covering things, if not necessarily in very much depth.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's the unfortunate thing. We got to a point where there wasn't that much being explained about in a lot of the history. You get the broad strokes of certain events, but you never really went into the details. You never really found out much. You just are like, it happened, okay? They quote South Park. Like that. The Holocaust happened, okay? I mean, that's what it feels. But it feels like that's what some of these people, when it comes to this, want to go back to. They want to come up with an alternative that broad strokes the Holocaust like things used to be. And it's just like, yeah, you're not going to get much. You're going to get the details of some things. You're not going to get much of the horrors that happen. Now, again, if we're talking about for 8th graders, again, if this was for primary school, like outside of middle school, hell no. Keep it away from elementary. If this was in an elementary school, I'd have a fit. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, it's just like it's not bad to have a bit of childhood innocence, but it's there. But
Yeah.
eventually, when you are gonna have to go out there in the world, and you have to realize just how horrible people can really be, and what leads up to that kind of stuff happening, so that it doesn't happen again.
And I say this, I've realized this. Both the left and the right have one thing in common. They want to shelter their youth. Do you ever realize that? Or at least the ones that are the extremes anyway, the extreme viewpoints.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree on that point.
Yeah, you have the left want to do it to prevent their fifis, and the right is doing it because they don't want corruption.
Not realizing that a lot of the time that sheltering ends up, when they actually do
Make
get
it worse.
glimpse of the outside world, it goes so much worse.
Exactly. I mean, I first read Mouse when I was in middle school. And it didn't bother me. Now, I never had it as a curriculum thing. I never had it for one of those. And again, I get it. It's not being removed there. But the fact that they basically said because of copyright, they can't edit it. Which makes it very clear if they could have, they would. And again, their reasons are beyond asinine. You know what I mean? They treat it like these kids are going to be... Again, this is going to brainwash the kids, one of the board members says. How is this going to brainwash them? It's showing the horrors. What kind of brainwashing would you get out of that? What do you think? Because I can't think of anything.
I'd say that it's really dense and ignorant of context at best. And, well...
Because it doesn't glorify anything, it horrifies it.
I don't want to think about the worst side of that.
Yeah. Well, no. I'm saying that's what the book does. The book horrifies things. You know what I mean? It makes it very clear. I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. They actually... Ooh. Art does not hold back.
No, it does not.
Heck, in this whole point of this bit called Time Flies, he's having a hard time trying to figure out how do I depict the camps tastefully, and is basically being told you can't. And that's the whole point of it. I love this one bit. You see this one guy who might be Jewish, but he's saying, I'm a German like you. I don't belong here. And I love how we have this moment where it's like, they'd hit him and laugh. Was he really German? Who knows? It was German prisoners also. But for the Germans, this man was Jewish, and eventually he got killed. But, you know, just stuff like that. And the one thing I realized is that Art's father survived a lot of his own skill, but also a lot on luck. There's just so much case where you're like, oh my God, he's going to get out of, oh shit, that was lucky. And if that doesn't...
And think of all of the people who weren't.
Oh, that's the big thing. But it also makes you realize that if there is a God looking down on him, he was looking down on him the whole time. You know what I mean? It's just... Again, it bothers me so much. And again, we're getting these unfortunate implications from people. Like, they're basically wanting to take this out of the curriculum. That basically comes off like you don't want to show the horrors of the Holocaust to people to kids who are at an age where they can understand it, meaning you want to water it down. I mean, there's a reason why, I hate to say it, whenever I heard the left saying that the right wants to either edit history or remove it or water it down, this is proving it! Wouldn't you agree?
It's just like, I can literally, like, I have a difficulty thinking of an actual good motivation for doing this.
Other than sheltering. Because again, the reason they're giving foul language, a bunch of goddammits. I'm sorry. After everything, people who are such holding onto their faith, like the Jews, going through all this stuff, you're going to be taking the Lord's name in vain after everything that's happening. That's what would happen. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
I mean, that's just what people say. I mean,
Yeah.
I would personally try to avoid saying it, but yeah.
But after everything, as all the stuff they go through in here, all the people they've lost, the lives lost and everything, you're gonna get a bunch of goddamn it's for
I mean,
trying to
there are
survive.
certainly a lot of. I mean, you look at the Book of Job, you look at the Psalms. There are definitely a lot of people who have a lot of interesting things
That's the
to
other
say
thing.
after how they've suffered.
How much violence is actually in the Bible?
And it's not like it's condoning that violence most of the time either, which is another thing that you see atheists getting wrong because it mistakes everything in the Bible as something prescriptive when nope, there are a lot of literary genres in there. You're just too lazy to understand the actual context.
And if someone actually made a proper comic adaptation, graphic novel adaptation of the Bible, oh, there's gonna be plenty of sections where you're not gonna be able to, there's gonna be horrific. You're gonna have a mature rating and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just what happened to Jesus before he went on the crucifix? All of that. Good Lord.
That's the reason why most like Bible Belt's kids only R-rated movie is The Passion of the Christ.
Exactly. Because Mel Gibson didn't hold back. How many? That's basically what I just said. There's a lot of violence in the Bible. So for those people who, they're a bunch of Bible thumpers who act like, keep this away, then why are you thumping a book that has a whole bunch of violence in it?
And it doesn't shy away from saying even when, like, the big figures of the faith have screwed up royally.
Exactly. I mean, remember that bit?
Like, it's just proof. There's just a hypocritical sense where you're sort of reading your own sensibilities of culture back into the Bible.
Exactly. And it feels like they're pushing back too hard because they've been so used to having stuff forced on them. Now they want to. There are people saying get rid of things that are critical race theory, but they're getting rid of stuff that was around before critical race theory became a thing. So I feel like they want to use that as an excuse to get rid of stuff they've been wanting to get rid of for years.
Yeah, it's just the Trojan horse that lets them do other things too.
Exactly, and whether or not they're doing this like a wahaha, or they're doing it just because get rid of it all, and they're just going overboard with they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like where are we going to be going in the next few years, and I don't like it.
That's certainly something I've worried about from time to time myself.
I mean, at first there's a point where I am so glad it looks like a lot of stuff is starting to go out of the left's favor. I'm grateful for a lot of that, but at the same time now I'm afraid of who will fill the void. Will it be actual moderates, or will it just be the people on the other side of the right who are just going to do just as bad in the other direction? And that's what scares me. It really does scare me. Because I don't know. You know what I mean? And what's next? Are they going to go after kaiju movies? Because, those monsters aren't gods. I wouldn't put past them with you.
Metaphors.
I would say, though.
They don't have the It's kind of funny because we make a joke out of what our English class is any good for other than learning that the curtains are blue because of the author's sadness. Well, maybe not that, but at least it teaches you critical thinking about the actual stuff that you read so you can understand context and metaphor and stuff like that. And that's something sorely lost on both sides of the political spectrum.
Exactly. Now, I know I'm being exaggerated when I say they'll go after Godzilla, but really, with how bad something they're getting, would you put it past some of the religious zealots?
I would not.
I mean, it's like no, Godzilla's not a god. There's only one god. Get rid of it. I wouldn't put it past him if we. Oh God, just imagine if we ever got into if things got as far back as it did with the church back in the medieval days. That'd be terrifying. You know what I mean? Where they had that much power. I don't think that would ever happen thanks to separation of church and states, but still. Right, there's a mistaken assumption that the right's excess will cancel or negate the left. They tend to pass through each other due to regional segregation. Exactly! He's not wrong, is he?
Really isn't.
It just, God, I don't. It just terrifies me. You know what I mean? We're already having the book bannings from last year. Now we're having this. And in fact, there are some people who are trying to downplay it. That's the other thing that bothers me. They're down. Some of the people are downplaying it. You know what I mean? Stuff like, oh, it's fine because the kids can still read it. You're missing the point here. The reasons they give you a depiction that they want to water stuff down.
And
That's
watering
what bothers
down
me.
this kind of stuff never ends well.
It never does. And I'm sorry. I'd rather have kids at least know some type of middle ground when it comes to the Holocaust. I don't think you have to show them the full brunt of everything, but don't be just broad stroking it either. And especially when I see so many people saying, oh, they're learning about World War II. They're learning about World War II. Yeah, but the Holocaust is just going to be a footnote if we go back to the old ways of history class. That one thing I definitely recall. When I was in high school and middle school, whenever we had history, they barely ever touched on the Holocaust. They focused on the rest of the war and how great America was, but rarely brought about the Holocaust.
Fortunately, it seems that my schooling was a little bit different because definitely covered the Holocaust a lot more. Like, we read a book called The Devil's Arithmetic in my English class where we were talking about the story of it from a little girl's perspective.
Yeah, but in my case, most of the time we ever had stuff in English, it would be the usual books, The Great Gatsby and all that, or Mice and Men. You know, the usual stuff that was more in the different eras, but nothing that extreme. Like I said, I had to check this out from the library to be able to get an understanding. And this is one of the few books that really opened my eyes to a lot of fiction. This and there was a book that was there about the King Arthur mythos. And that really opened my eyes too. And you can't get any more Catholic or Christian than King Arthur, can ya?
I mean, it's sort of like a constellation of a whole bunch of folklore that crystallized over the centuries, but
yeah, you mean the Holy Grail and all that.
Same kind of vibe.
Yeah, the Holy Grail and all that. The Crusades. Well, yeah, the Crusades.
That's a whole other can of worms, and we've already got one open.
Yeah, exactly. It's just. I just want things. I want things to get better. There was a point, and I'm sure you recall, like the late '90s, early 2000s, where things can be good. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have any type of too much anger and fighting with each other, not that much. And it felt like even after 9/11, it felt like things were still in a decent place compared to where they are now or where they were before. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have. It felt like. The funny thing is, it feels like during Bush, you actually had stuff that was like there was some sense of normalcy. There was not much insanity. Probably because Bush wasn't a full-on Republican, but it was enough to keep the Republicans happy, so you have both sides happy.
Yeah, most of my memories from that era are relatively vanilla.
Yeah, when you really think about it. And even with the first couple years of Obama, it was fine. It was after the second term where things started to go off the rails. And then Trump got elected, and then
there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
Never again. After Trump got elected and took it from Hillary, things were never the same again. It became so split, such a divide that we should have seen coming. We should have seen coming, but no one did. You know what I mean?
Or people were sounding the alarm on it, and like Cassandra, no one listened.
Exactly. Muhammad makes a good point. Make no mistake, they're coming from Robert E. Howard's Coleman and Call the Conqueror and Red Sonja. I wouldn't be surprised. You know what I mean? I would not be surprised, especially again since you have them praying to the god Crumb and everything. Again, if we have some people who are going to be that overzealous, I would not be surprised if it gets to that. Here's the one thing I got to say about these people, who are very religious. They got to realize there's a reason why a lot of people started becoming atheists and stop believing. And unfortunately, it's because a lot of the religious right, made people separate from the church, but then they stop having things to believe in anymore, which is what caused them to grab onto these causes.
Which
So
is
when you think about it,
it's just like,
sorry.
it's not like there isn't like robust, like actually like well thought out stuff out there as far as arguing for religion goes. It does exist. They just choose
Yeah.
dogma over that.
But when you think about it, though, it kind of indicates a lot of the huge numbers of people who join the far left is in part because of the far right pushing people away into people becoming atheists or just not believing in anything anymore. So they fill the void in with political causes. I mean, am I wrong? Am I overthinking it?
No, I don't. I think you're on the money there.
Yeah, because you gotta see about it. That's the main reason why so many people act away. They have no other causes or beliefs to believe it. They don't have a God who they fear being smited or whatever. They have nothing to hold on to but their political causes, and that's why they just hold on to it with such fervor. You were about to say something. I cut you off.
Like, I've not necessarily gone into too much detail with it, but this is definitely something I have struggled with, because it's just like, they're really some of the people who have some of the loudest and most insistent voices. And well, it's to say, I certainly had a time in college where my mental health wasn't great, and if you thought the rest of the country wasn't good at addressing mental health, some segments of the church are really not good at addressing mental health.
Oh, hell no! Hell no!
My parents, who have fortunately always had a more sane sense of religion, who managed to, like,
balance it, right?
Recognize when a church wasn't necessarily going the right way and move elsewhere, that sort of thing. They fortunately were able to stage an intervention for me, and I was doing a whole lot better now. But it's just like, yeah, it's just like, there's a lot of cults out there taking under various names in America and elsewhere in the world that are taking advantage of a lot of these troubled times. Sometimes it's cults of business, sometimes it's cults of politics, sometimes it's cults of personality, sometimes it's more actually religious cults. But the fact of the matter is, people need a purpose in life, and if somebody is going to give them that in desperation, good or bad, stuff happens.
Exactly, and that's the downside with so much. It's like you need the more balance of anything, a balanced cause, a balanced religion. You need that for people to have it. Otherwise, they are going to become twisted individuals. Because that's the other thing I realize. You have the extreme religious who make people into such zealots, and then you have people who are again with no cause that end up grabbing onto the wrong causes, like feminism or wokeness or SJWism or whatever. Because these people have nothing else to believe in their life. They have a hole in themselves that they need to have filled. And they don't want to do religion because many of them had bad experience probably growing up or were raised, don't believe in religion. Religion's evil or whatever. And then their only cause they have to believe in is their politics, their causes. And that's just as scary as a religious zealot. Because they're no different, really. They're the same side of the same coin, aren't they?
Yep, it's the same impulse that ends up driving both.
Exactly. And when you look at it,
I'm not saying I have all of this figured out. Lord knows I am still very much a mess, but I do try.
And I think you're doing a good job at it, Ingrid. I really think you are. I think you're doing a good job getting figured out. I mean.
Well, that's good to hear, because, yeah, I would want you to have met me like about 5 or 6 years ago, because I was kind of a wreck.
You mean right before we first met? Like only a few years before we first met?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing we both got our jobs when we did.
Oh, yeah, it really was, because that's another sort of structure in life that can stabilize you.
I think both that and I think
to do with your time.
And I think having you as a friend and me as a friend for you, I think we've helped each other out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we both just had work to focus on, I think we might have gone a bit crazy long ago. We weren't doing our movie nights and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that partially in jest. You know that, right?
Of course.
First wave feminism should not be lumped in with fourth wave feminism. Exactly.
Amen.
Not saying there weren't some first wave feminists that were just as nuts as what would be fourth wave. There were.
But they had an actual point.
Yeah. Well, no, I would more say the people who had a voice were the ones who were reasonable about it. The ones that were more the zealots of it were just the few and far in between. They're like, we want equal rights. We want to take the power from the man. Oh, shut up, you. But the problem is, though, the more they got what they wanted, eventually those who wanted more, to the point of saying we want to get rid of men, started getting a bigger voice because they weren't getting what they wanted. Everyone is like, it's basically like you have first wave feminism. They just wanted equal rights. But as each wave came and each portion of the prior wave got what they wanted, so they walked away, they eventually got to a point where now we have people who cannot be satiated. Forest Wave Feminism is a feminism movement that began in 2012 and is characterized by a focus on the empowerment of women, the use of internet tools, and intersectionality. Yep! Because they want to use it so they can get the absolute power because they're not happy with it. It's not enough. They want the complete opposite. They want to make everything 180. Equal rights, equal responsibility. That's your hominism motto. Good motto. So, yeah, anything else you want to bring about this topic, Ingrid? Because I think we're kind of tapping out.
Yeah, I was saying it's definitely something important to talk about, and it's definitely no real easy answers to this question.
Definitely.
But I suppose the last thing I want to leave off with is that if you look across the New Testament, Jesus' most stern condemnations are pretty much always reserved for the religious elites. And that's something that is very easy to forget sometimes.
Yep, the one part I always... Yep. The one example I always had was they arrive at his temple and it became, as he put it, a den of thieves.
Mm-hmm.
That, good God, was he mad?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yes.
That was a point where...
of courts chase all of the moneylenders out.
Yeah, and it's like, you can't, even with the church, they're partially to blame. Am I right? But anyway, so thank you guys who joined us for it. Thank you, Ingrid, for coming on such short notice. And let's hopefully things will get better before it gets worse. So take care, everyone. Oh, actually, Jesus Christ accused the guides of failing the nation of Israel. Oof. Yeah. All right.